Viewers, those listening to this tape or this video, I want to bring to your attention that the politics of proxy wars in Africa is becoming real, and it has become a reality. I want to bring to the attention of the African states that time and time again we have fallen victims of proxy wars. We fight wars that are not ours. We fall in conflicts that are not supposed to be, don't help Africa, and they don't help our countries at all. The proxy war that is in East and Central and the Horn of Africa has been ignited, supported, equipped by France. It has been very real that the French government, quietly through its company called Total Oil, has been searching for resources around the triangle of East and Central Africa and the Great Lakes region and the Horn of Africa. The LAPSET was one of them, which could have been a landmark project for the people of France. They withdrew from it. The Tanga to Mwanza, they made it, they withdrew from it. The search for oil and resources through Total Oil has brought us the dangers of a proxy war in the region. It is therefore very prudent for people of the region to understand the dynamics that we are going through. For example, in Rwanda and the Burundi conflict, there is a proxy war. We are fighting a proxy country. It has brought us to a war between the two countries, between Uganda and Rwanda and Burundi. There is a proxy war in Congo who is sponsoring a resurgence of rebels that are fighting President Tshisekedi because he was not supported by countries that we know very well. This type of strategy has happened in North Africa, where Libya has been reduced to rebels, where each faction, even the government supported by United Nations, is being bombarded by a rebel called Khalifa Haftar, who is funded by countries that we know. The question of Somalia and the Kenyan maritime presents a challenge, a test case for Africa and East Africa to stand firm and denounce the actions of countries that bring proxy wars and proxy politics in our region. It is therefore my humble submission that for this conflict, for this to end, we must do enough publicity, advocacy around the area to tell and explain to the international community why this problem is going to create an imbalance in the peace in the region, and the regional peace will be affected. It is therefore my humble submission that as a Ugandan whose troops, brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers of other many millions Ugandans who are in Somalia, condemn any action by the Somali government to try to resolve issues that should have been resolved amicably as Africans within the African confines. I submit therefore that some of us will go a mile further to do now, from now onwards, to expose, to show the challenges of these countries that make us fight a proxy war in Africa. Thank you very much for listening. God bless you.
First of all, let me thank you. I've prepared 2 papers which I believe will be circulated because they'll not be projected. But if you can see, first of all, I want to agree with the Honorable Minister. I've done 2 pictorials. One of them is described as Africa at the dinner table. And if you look at Africa at the dinner table, Africa is on a plate and it is meat. And the diners at the dinner table are France, the United Kingdom, the United States, the European Union, the Chinese, and progressively the Arabs. And my second picture is the African hotspots. It's not visible from there. But if you look at Africa today and you make a clean sweep with your mind, there are different conflicts of different intensity in Somalia, in northern Mauritania, in northern Mali, in Central African Republic, Democratic Republic of Congo, Guinea-Bissau, in the Cameroons, in South Sudan, and one can go on and on. And there is a sense in which Africa has always been alive to the question of interference. I will refer this audience, particularly those who are starting, to take time and read the 32 odd speeches that were made in the month of May 1963 by the then heads of states and government of independent African states, the 32 of them. And there are two speeches that I want to isolate for this presentation. One was by David Dacko of Central African Republic. And in thanking Emperor Haile Selassie and Kwame Nkrumah on that day, he said that we must never forget that the colonial power has not left us. We must recognize that he did not go willingly. And if we don't check them, they'll come back again. And what would little Central African Republic do against them? Today, he is right. Today, if we remember the activities of France and how they propped up the regime of Jean Bedel Bokassa, he was right. Today, as the Honorable Minister has indicated, Africa remains the only continent in the world that is referred to in these terms, Anglophone, to mean that we are a sphere of our erstwhile colonizers. About 2 weeks ago, there was a meeting of the Commonwealth in London, England. And a friend of mine who is an Anglophile sent me the photograph very gleefully, saying this is a meeting of 53 equal states. I told him, no. If it was so, why is it that the leadership of the Commonwealth is hereditary rather than rotational? In other words, in the minds of the British, her former colonies are still under her tutelage. And I want to submit to us that in the minds of what I'll call the conceptual West, they think they have a divine duty to instruct Africans what to do. True. And in the minds of many African leaders, they think that they have a divine duty to accept what they are told. That, in my view, is what the Honorable Minister was talking about, the mindset. And this is something that has been examined. We have seen France and its very pernicious presence in Africa. We know what they did in Burkina Faso against Thomas Sankara. We know what they did in Mali or the Sudan against Modibo Keita or against Sekou Touré in Guinea. Pernicious to the core. The Portuguese, we know what battles had to be fought in that area. And let me put this very bluntly. When the former leader of Portugal, Marcelo Caetano, was asked, why can you not allow the colonies to gain independence? This is what he said in substance. As I have examined world history over the years, the following have emerged. that the Caucasians have been responsible for monumental discoveries in the development of man. So have the Chinese, so have the Arabs. But the Africans have been responsible for nothing. They are only fit as hewers of wood and drawers of water. And I want to submit to you who are present here that in the conceptual West's unguarded moments, or guarded moments, that is what they think. And that is how they relate to Africa. So the whole idea that they will interfere is something that they think is their God-given duty. I said there were two speeches in 1963 that I wanted to refer to. I referred to David Dako. The second one was the speech by Kwame Nkrumah. And Kwame provided the solution. He did not complain about colonialism. He said, we must live here with one army, with one command. We must live here with one currency. We must live here with one currency, one country. I do not know where its capital will be, but I suggest Leopoldville or Bangui. Other leaders may have their thoughts. Kwame was right, but who listened to him? Several years down the line, and I've said it in my paper, there were coup d'etats which were engineered, there were mutinies which were engineered, and other forms of destabilization. And I want to believe that the person who actually said it very well in the 1980s was the former American President Ronald Reagan. He said, the United States of America does what is in her best interest. And I agree with him. Does Africa do what is in her best interest? Do African leaders do what is in the best interest of Africa? Interference will be there in very blatant and brazen ways and in subtle ways. I've always asked, until very recently, how many African countries manufactured bullets? Very few. Until very recently, how many African countries, in fact, how many African countries manufacture jet fighters? How many African countries are involved in the arms industry? Some of the leading conceptual West countries which pontificate to us about prizes, peace prizes, are the leading manufacturers of landmines. And if you look at their foreign exchange earners, it is the military and security items. So they say with their mouths, what do they not believe in their hearts? In Kiswahili we say, vita vya panzi furaha ya kunguru. That when the locusts are fighting, it is the joy of the hawk. Because when they kill each other, they get the food easily, dead. It is in the best interest, I dare submit, without fear of contradiction, that the elite in the conceptual West does not want Africa to stabilize, despite their assertion to the contrary. And you'll see it in every country, because conflict is a major industry. Today, you look at South Sudan and the many peace conferences that are being held, but if you ask who supplies the arms, who provides safe havens, it is the conceptual West. And when I use the term conceptual West, I'm saying that it extends to countries which are geographically not in the West, like Australia or Canada. So I'm submitting in answer to your question, Joe, that interference is there, and it is part, to use this old cliche, of the neo-colonial project. The neo-colonial project requires that Africa must remain within the sphere of influence of these states. Today, if you look at the United Kingdom, which has left Europe, one would have thought that those are their cousins and that they should sit in comfort with them. You will now see their involvement being de-emphasized in Europe, and their interest and appetite growing towards the Commonwealth. Because in the Commonwealth, they are the major domos. They'll tell us what to do. In Europe, they have to grapple with the Germans and the French, and they don't like it. That is the unspoken bit of it. The French also are in Europe, but the Germans are too strong. and they don't like it. So they want to hold Cote d'Ivoire, Gabon, and tell them what to do. I do not know how many of you saw the press conference that was attended by President Macron of France and Nana Addo of Ghana. And when Nana Addo spoke as an African should, you could see the body language of the French president. How dare this man speak this way? In other words, I'm saying that interference is the mother's milk of European economies. But to answer your second question, they have their own recruits who Professor Philip Nying'oro will be speaking here. To use the old vocabulary of those days, they have the people you call their comprador bourgeoisie. You must remember. The comprador bourgeoisie are Africans with black faces, but essentially they are doing the bidding of these powers. They are the ones you'll find them in different spheres. And they will be present. They are in your cabinet, but they are actually representatives of the foreign intelligence agencies of those countries. We know this. If you look at the declassified papers from the United States, we now know that some of leading cabinet ministers in many African countries were working for the CIA or some Western agencies. So you are sitting in cabinet, and in these days of the mobile phone, they are possibly texting their masters in Europe and America. So interference is also exacerbated by these comprador bourgeois for their own benefits, and it has never changed, Honorable Minister. In the early days of slavery, they gave some of the chiefs mirrors and alcohol. Today, what they give them are flats in Paris or in Dubai, and that is what makes them undermine Africa. The third mode of interference is through institutions. Look at the competition as it is now. There is a new entrant into the market that is called China. China is very subtle. Many people wrote the obituary of Rwanda in 1994. 20 years down the line, it has been demonstrated that Africans can actually do it. Between 1983 and 1987, I think Thomas Sankara in Burkina Faso also demonstrated that it can be done. We saw in Somalia, despite their problem. So my prescription is African unity. Africa must now begin to negotiate initially in terms of blocks, SADC, ECOWAS, East African Community, and ultimately as African Union. And lo and behold, we must do it. And I've always said this cliche, we must do it, because if we don't do it, we will be done. Thank you.
In Africa, we see a lot of uprisings, planning for uprisings, plotting for uprisings in several African countries. The events on the African continent, therefore, as predicted much earlier myself, in 2017, I said before 2020, 13 African countries would have undergone either soft regime change, soft coups, or violent regime change through uprising, which now seem to be real. The signs that and symbols that we see are the real symbols and the signs that more is to come against African governments. What do we do then? There is a new method of changing governments strategically placed in the United States of America by George Soros. George Soros funds civil societies, civil disobedience, civil violence in Africa. It is upon you, Africans and African heads of state, wherever you are, as you plan to convene next month or before the end of this month in Addis Ababa, to understand the magnitude of this regime change strategy. Many wars are taking place, internal strife, conflicts like the one in Cameroon, Amazonia, like the one in Biafra, Boko Haram, and then in Biafra, like the one in Libya. But the theme is the same. Regime change, uprising. Is it a matter of taking over our resources? You see, the war in Congo has erupted again. Unknown militias have arrived in Congo, restarted the war, and it is going on. All these culminate to one thing. Are we ready to be independent? As I said last week, this week, are people in Africa ready to accept the results of elections? Elections everywhere in Africa are bringing the chaos we see. The people of Africa seem to be divided after elections or before elections. Is Africa ready for elections? Do we need elections in Africa? If so, are we tolerant enough to accept the results? Are we ready? Which method can we use in Africa to make sure that there is hope for the countries and there is hope and the future of Africa is guaranteed? Viewers, the High Court in Malawi today or yesterday was hearing a case when the president had already been sworn in. If the president of Malawi has been sworn in, then the High Court is hearing the case. Is that not a disaster, an accident in waiting? Whether this will make us have a peaceful Africa remains to be seen. And may God help us to build a better Africa. Thank you very much.
It is the Wednesday, 29th January 2020, and the show is Good Morning Africa, coming to you all the way from Kenya's capital here in Nairobi. Of course, the station is Punchline Africa TV, where we've made it our business to tell the world about what is happening here in the continent. Thank you so much. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you're watching us across the world, and we have so much in store for you. But of course, before we get into the other African news making headlines across the continent, we shall go through what is making headlines across Kenya this morning. As we usually say, you know, charity always begins at home. And so with me on the line to help us look at the political situation in Kenya this morning is none other than Dr. David Matanga. Doctor, good morning.
Good morning, Miriam.
Yes, indeed. Are you doing fine this morning?
Yes, good morning. Wherever you are in Africa, thank you very much This is indeed, as Miriam says, the radio, the television, the mouthpiece of Pan-Africanism, all the way from the Republic of Kenya in Nairobi. Thank you very much for watching us. Thank you very much for listening to us. Thank you very much. Continue with your patronage. God bless you, but I am here right now, ready for you, Miriam.
All right, so Doctor, of course, we shall start with what is making headlines across the country this morning, and I see in all the three major newspapers, they're talking. The president yesterday was in Nakuru, where the president says he has no interest in politics and is only seeking to unite the country. He also singles out, of course, a member of parliament, Bahati Ngunjiri, for how he constantly, insults the president. But we shall not talk about that right now. But what the president said in his, when he was speaking on a rally after he commissioned the opening of a cement company, the Simba Cement Company plant in Salgai, Nakuru County, he said his mission, his desire, what he wants to leave as his biggest legacy here in the country is to unite Kenyans, and nothing is going to stop him to do that. I don't know, what is your comment on that?
Thank you very much, Miriam. That is exactly why I have agreed, and I will agree, and I will support, and I will engage, and I will disagree with anybody who does not support the president on the question of unity of purpose. The President Uhuru Kenyatta is saying he needs unity of purpose. He needs to present a united Kenya, to leave a legacy of a united Kenya. There is no shortcut to that. There is no alternative, no position that will change that. The only thing that Kenyans need to do today is to have that unity of purpose. And that unity of purpose can only come through the redemption strategy, the reconciliation. And the unity will only arrive through accountability, reconciliation, forgiveness. If people of Kenya forgive each other, if people of Kenya heal from the past, if people of Kenya move on the direction of BBI, building the bridges across the country, if the people of Kenya can restitute, if the people of Kenya can reparate, if the people of Kenya above all can tell the truth-telling, that is what we call a redemption strategy that the president initiated with Raila Amolo Odinga. There is no shortcut here. Let's not beat about the bush. You cannot think of ruling a country which is disunited. Even if you're a country, which I believe most candidates in Kenya want to find a united Kenya. I don't think candidates who want to be in 2022 elections want to find a Kenya that is disorganized, disoriented, a Kenya that is fragmented. No, they want a Kenya which is united, proceed with the program of President Uhuru Kenyatta. Less than that, there will be nothing that will stop President Uhuru Kenyatta to achieve his aim of a united Kenya. I support him.
All right, and you've been saying here, in fact, it is yesterday when we were having almost a similar conversation, and, after a section of Jubilee leaders came out and, made a decree that, they do not care about whatever other arrangement, they'll start having their own parallel BBI meetings, and you said it is important now for the president to hit the ground and be part of some of these, rallies and some of these, rally to popularize BBI and just help Kenyans understand. So yesterday, after President commissioned this cement company and he went on a rally, and we saw he majored on the unity of Kenya and how the BBI is the roadmap for us to achieve that. Is it the beginning of us seeing President Uhuru Kenyatta to be present in some of these meetings moving forward?
Yes, and I told you that yesterday. Yes, I am glad that President Uhuru Kenyatta had it. And I said this in the morning before he hit the ground. Let him go and face his tormentors. The tormentors who speak simply. The man like Ngunjiri, Wambuku, Ngunjiri, Kimani Isore. the MP for Bahati, the Lucy Cannon, a hired canon to speak nonsense, to tell lies about the president. These are the people that the president should face, and that's the challenge he took to Nakuru yesterday. I can see Wambuk Gujiri Kimani has tried to answer the president with a stupid video or being given an interview. It's rubbish. There is nothing that he can answer more than that. He is only talking because the president is not on the ground. But when the president steps to the ground, he won't have any peace. He won't be able to talk. He won't be able even to make any of those statements, because the president of the Republic of a country is a president. And for you to belittle the president, Gungiri Kimani has been one of the few hired by the Tanga group to belittle the president, to besmirch the president, to prostitute the name of the president, to engage the president and the smear campaign, throw the name of the president in the mud. But there are the people who feel for the president. For us, friends of the president, whether Kenya, in Africa, we feel that President Uhuru Kenyatta has done enough for Pan-Africans. And therefore, we shall also stand firm to the volunteer to defend him, his name, his legacy. He wants to get a legacy. For sure, if you don't have a legacy, if you cannot achieve the economic miracle because of this unity, what one would you go for? Would you go for miracle of economy when the country is disunited, or you would go for legacy of unity? You would rather go for the legacy of unity. But be remembered for having created a united Kenya, where all tribes come together and speak with one language. Believe me or not, the people of Kenya have been speaking in different languages during it. What are you going to do as Kenyans? Are you not going to be the same people who are going to kill each other? Are you not going to be the same people looking for guns to kill each other? Are you not going to fight during the elections? That's what the president is trying to tell the people, to stop it and unite. And he has shown you stand in his way like a Gujiri Kimani. The wind of unity will sweep you away from the people who want to be united.
All right, Doctor, but even as you speak about unity and President Uhuru Kenyatta's really desire to have a united Kenya, we saw that meeting that members allied to Deputy President William Ruto had in Naivasha is still really the hot potato, the talk of town today. And we saw yesterday lawmakers that are allied to NASA leader Raila Odinga and President Uhuru Kenyatta come out and criticize the planned parallel rallies that the other team is planning. They're saying this will curtail the unity, and they're saying these unity proposals that does not make any sense. It will beat the essence of a united Kenya. So I don't know what you make of that.
It is true. You can see for yourself the divisions. Some people go and say we shall hold our parallel rally. Why do you want to hold the parallel rally, yet you are going to speak on the same thing? Why are you giving 5% to each thing? 5%, 10%, 5%. They are the group that made in Naivasha wants to cover corruption. If you look at the of a Kenya, is the Kenya that covers this corruption. Way of living will be reduced, will be given in those percentages, because he's a man of percentage. Moses Kuria is a man of percentage. He has lived near power by brokerage. He does not do anything very credible. He brokers. He's always brokering his way out. He's always telling people, I can do this for you, Your Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta. Give me the money, President Dr. William Ruto. Give me the support. I'm going to hold a meeting. Brokerage. The politics of brokerage is what Moses Kuria lives in. Is what Murkomen lives in. Is what Gujiri Kimani lives in. And we are going to go talk about them also, expose their brokerage. Brokerage is what is killing Kenya. The politics of brokers. A broker. Kuria is a broker. A big broker. He brokers everything. Even he brokers how to buy his house. He brokers how to pay his rent. This type of human beings should be told. Kenyans must be told. He goes to tell a lie in order to earn a living. Some of us don't tell lies to earn a living. That type of condition, can I tell you what it is called? Do you know what it is called, Miriam?
Mm-hmm.
It is called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is a type of people who don't tell the truth. They tell lies. They tell lies. They change. When they see money in Dr. Rudolph's camp, he says, give me 5 million, I'm going to insult Uhuru Kenyatta. Give me 10 million, I'm going to insult so and so. Give me 10 million, I will buy witnesses. Cognitive dissonance.
Mm-hmm.
That is the order in psychology. It's called cognitive dissonance. I've written a full essay about it on my page, Matanga Leaks. You can read it down and you see how people tell lies. Give me money, I will buy witnesses. To bring for you witnesses who saw Ruto doing this. This is the type of mentality we have in Kenya among the politicians like Moses Kuria. And we should not, any leader relying on Moses Kuria theories, he is also in that part of category of psychology. And that is my stand. Therefore, when they insult the president, they expect people not to also defend the president. We shall, and we shall continue to defend him. Because there are certain things he cannot say, but there are things we can say also for the sake of the unity of that country. That is the position, and that's what the position of other people who support the president will be forever and ever. Thank you.
All right, and also when those leaders meeting, unlike to President Uhuru Kenyatta and of course Raila Odinga came out yesterday, they said that the opposing team that wants to have its own parallel rallies should start by having their own handshake and then start their own BBI process and then come and popularize it. And so they should not be tampering with this process that was started by President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga. I don't know if such a counter is it counterproductive, or will this just work further to divide, to bring the disunity that the other side seems to be instigating? I don't know. Should this other side maybe be quiet and just go on about their business, or it was necessary for them to come out and counter attack those comments by the other side?
To me, it is counterproductive to answer Moses Kuria. I've told you. Because he has got that cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is behavior. It's a behavior where someone smells money like a hyena, smelling meat, then he goes to tell lies that this is what Uhuru Kenyatta wants to do against you. Then he earns a living. You know, that type of behavior. It's time Kenyans stand away from that type of behavior. You don't need to answer such a creature. Such people are the people who bring conflicts in a country. Moses went on a national television and said he brought witnesses to fix Ruto. Then what is he doing with Ruto? Why is he the spokesman of Ruto? Whom is he going to sell next? Whom is he going to sell next? Is he going to sell who next when people have died? Surely. Whom is he going to sell next? These are the people who buy their lives. These are the people who create conflicts in Africa. I'm telling you in the name of God, they create conflicts in Africa. Believe me or not, if you Kenyans don't take heed, it is not going to be a good ride for you. If you listen to people like Moses Kuria, these are the people who create conflicts. So don't listen to them. Kimani Ngonjiri of Bahati has been insulting the president from morning to evening in order for people to award him with some money. If you look at the period, the background of Kimani Ngonjiri was going to bankruptcy. He had been declared bankrupt. But he's starting now also to talk about in order to have to pay off that bankruptcy. It's the truth, Miriam. I stand by it. And God help if Kenyans of the other wing start answering this type of people. They will be praying in their hands. And believe me or not, we shall not have a Kenya.
All right, and even as we talk about that, MPs on the front pages of the Standard newspaper this morning, Doctor, it says members of parliament allege a scheme to impeach President Uhuru, and it continues to say allies of ODM chief Raila Odinga accused DP's Ruto's camp of plotting the president ouster at Naivasha retreat, but Senate Majority Leader Murkomen dismisses claim as hot air by desperate opposition. Are these claims founded, Doctor?
Yes, and that we have been talking about this for a long time. They have been arranging to impeach the president. That headline is not wrong. But whether they have the numbers or they will have the courage to do it, it remains to be done. It remains to be done. But who is doing all these funny things? It's a Machiavellian. It's a Nikolai Machiavelli. I told you yesterday, Miriam. There's a Nikolai Machiavelli in Kenya who is thinking of Rome when Sicily is burning. Don't you get it now? Don't you see a Machiavelli playing tactics, crying tears that I am bad off, crying victim, I'm the only one being victimized, crying this, I'm the only one being hated, crying this. Don't you see? He's playing on emotions of the younger people on Facebook. Oh, I am now the son of the this. I am that. I'm that. That type of conversational politics. That type of conversational politics. That syndrome of anthropological difficulties. Where you grew, where jiggers were paining you. And then you find that you are now having no jiggers. You want to get everybody who made you to have jiggers to be killed. That type of politics is not very good. That type of having, it is against the doctrine of a Bible for a person to commit, to have greed. If you have a lot of greed, you are committing a sin against the Bible. It's amongst the 10 commandments. Tewegombanga ebintu bya muno. Tewegombanga in Uganda, meaning don't, please. Don't always think of lust of somebody. Don't feel so jealous. Don't admire people's things. Isn't it a 10 commandment, Miriam? That admiring somebody with greed, with lust, can break the doctrine of the Bible. We grew up being taught that in Uganda. Those Ugandans listening on this international network. This is exactly what has happened. This is exactly what is taking place. Someone is planting bad seeds of poison amongst the supporters of President Uhuru Kenyatta. A time has come, if President Uhuru Kenyatta does not wake up, stamp authority, we shall descend into unmanageable proportions, like the one we are seeing now. If I'm wrong, there's one thing with 4 letters that will exonerate me, and that thing is called TIME, time.
All right. And Doctor, even as all this politicking is going on, and we know also President Uhuru Kenyatta is really focused on delivering on his legacy, what dangers does all of this pose to President Kenyatta's legacy?
Stagnation, retarding the development, retarding the progress of universal health care, retarding the progress of the food security, retarding the process of infrastructure, housing, cheap housing, retarding development of manufacturing. That is it, Miriam. That is the danger. And that's the danger that every Kenyan must fight against. That is the danger that everyone must say, we have had enough of these guys who are retrogressing the president. Every time he wants to do something, someone is coming with a planted story. And that is what will destroy the legacy of His Excellency the President if he does not stamp up the authority.
All right. I don't know, is there anything else you'd like to talk about before we conclude with the Kenyan, the politics in Kenya today? And then perhaps there's a story there from Africa News, from Malawi, that I really want to get your thoughts on. I don't know if is there anything else you would like to add in the Kenyan?
I would like to urge the people of Kenya to support the president. I would like to urge them to support him, to give him support, to give him the moral support, to give him the material support, to give him the way forward, to help him to carry the cross of uniting the people of Kenya. That is my wish. And I'm together with you up to Jerusalem. Let President Uhuru Kenyatta remember that Jesus did not enter the temple of God with any disciple. He entered there with a donkey and a whip. Mr. President, get a donkey and a whip. Whip thieves out of your temple. There's a big temple ahead. The deep dive ahead. Do it now before it gets too late. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. But Doctor, before I let you go, there's some information that I got about Malawi that really had me a bit troubled, and I would like to just get your opinion on it. I'll just read this news item for you. Now, a number of boarding schools in Malawi have closed and sent their pupils home ahead of a court ruling next week about the country's disputed election. Opposition parties are challenging the re-election of President Peter Mutharika in May last year, and the judiciary has announced that its decision will be announced next Monday. So ahead of the announcement by the judiciary, Doctor, of this case that has been going on in Malawi about the disputed presidential elections that happened last year on 21st of May, schools are closing and they're sending back the children at home because of uncertainty. I don't know, what is it that would have parents or schools closed out because the presidential elections would be announced next Monday? Are we looking to see chaos in Malawi?
Yes. In one of my clips there, I told you, and I said conflicts in Africa come as a result of bad elections. And the truth is very clear. The truth is elections in Africa create conflicts. Elections in Africa create chaos. We are not through with it. Kenya must also clean their elections to avoid the conflict. It is true that the Malawi situation presents us with quite a number of challenges. For the schools to close down, they have seen the lodge, the type of background on the ground, things are not very good. It looks that it is going to be a showdown between the government and the opposition. And that is happening everywhere in Africa, in Uganda, across. There is opposition is even being stopped from carrying their own party. The elections being conducted freely and fairly by them as the ruling party this week was conducting its own election. So you see the problem that we have in Africa. The African problem, the springboard of all our chaos we have in African people is elections. Therefore, the Malawi case is not different from what is happening in elsewhere in Africa. I am sure why people have closed these schools is because they are going to have a problem, and they have seen the problem, and that problem is going to bring quite a lot of health for the people of Malawi. So people have said people's children should go back. People's children should go back home and be looked after by parents instead of them being killed in schools, because there is bound to be chaos in Malawi because of the ruling. And I call upon them, the people of Malawi, why do you want to kill? Actually, 5 years is next time. Why don't you be accommodative? Do the Kenyan way. Have a handshake and move on and create a better country, a better Africa. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Doctor, and thank you. It was a pleasure having you this morning. That was Dr. Matanga speaking with us through the phone and just looking at, the news-making headlines in Kenya and that, the latest from Malawi. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Miriam, and I want to thank you very much for keeping the fort. I am I'm watching you wherever I am in Mombasa, that I will be seeing you. I love the way you present the views. God bless you, and God bless Africa. Let me, recover. I will come back, and I will take the stand.
All right, thank you so much, and we shall take a very short break, and I'll be back with the rest of African news. Good morning, Africa. We'll be right back. Don't go too far.
Associated to 2022 elections have dominated the political arena in Kenya for years and months now. President Uhuru Kenyatta, in the recent past, has warned people not to engage in politics, but engage in nation building and development. As much as the president has given these warnings, the people have not heeded to the warnings. The objective of improving the lives of Kenyans is the most important thing that you need to have. Kenyans need to have their lives improved. Kenyans need development instead of campaigns. Kenyans don't eat campaigns. Kenyans need health care, good housing, industries, jobs for younger generation, and above all, infrastructure to be able to transport the goods that they manufacture and the crops that they grow for export. It is therefore very important for the people of Kenya to understand that with development lacking, the country will not prosper. President Uhuru Kenyatta has emphasized again that the only thing that can bring Kenya to a world-standing nation, a developing nation, is prosperity through unity of purpose. If you are not united, you cannot deliver to what other nations went through and got united. Look at Germany, for example. It had a lot of anger after the Second World War. But today, Germany gives us the loans that we share, that we Google. You Google a company in Germany and you get what you want. We also global their money, hammer it, eat it every day. Some of us through corruption, some of us through extended kickbacks. But Germany had more anger than any other country in the world after the Second World War. Today, it's a healed country. The only message that Kenyans can take from here is a redemption strategy. The only thing that can heal this country is redemption, forgiveness, reconciliation, restitution, and reparations. And above all, truth-telling and accountability that will bring about the word redemption, which is healing. So for now, those who want to have a better Kenya tomorrow, begin the journey now. 1 inch by inch, move together with your president. The nation will be a great nation. Thank you.
Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. Earlier on, I was speaking to Dr. Matanga about the political dynamics in the country today, and of course, the meeting that members of parliament allied to the Deputy President William Ruto had over on Monday that has really caused another political storm, and we're seeing all sides just accusing and counter accusations, and here in the country. But right now, I'd like us just to turn our attention to the rest of Africa and look at what else is happening across the continent. And of course, our first news item, we already looked at it with Dr. Matsanga, but I'll just like to read it through, and then we shall get into the rest of the news. Now, a number of boarding schools in Malawi have closed and sent their pupils home ahead of a court ruling next week about the country's disputed election. Opposition parties are challenging the re-election of President Peter Mutharika in May last year, and the judiciary has announced that its decision will be announced next Monday. The schools say they fear there may be violence in the aftermath of the ruling. Leading bus companies have also issued notices saying there will be no services on the day of the judgment. Malawi has been experiencing unprecedented wave of political violence since the poll. The information minister has now called for calm, saying the government has put in place measures to ensure all citizens are safe. We move to Sudan, where the United Nations Refugee Agency, UNHCR, says recent violence in Sudan's West Darfur region has forced nearly 60,000 people from their homes. 4,000 have fled in the past week alone. Some have fled across the border to Chad. The UNHCR described conditions as dire, with most of the displaced living in the open air or under makeshift shelters. It says food and water are desperately needed. Dozens have been killed in recent clashes between Africa and Arab ethnic groups in the capital of West Darfur, El Geneina. And we go to Uganda, where 2 people were killed when a military plane crashed on Tuesday morning in central Uganda, officials have confirmed. Brigadier Richard Karemire, Uganda's People's Defense Forces spokesperson, said the Ranger AF-302 went down during a training mission in Bulo, Butambala district, killing 2 crew members on board. And we move to South Sudan, where a member of the British House of Lords says she witnessed the immediate aftermath of massacre in the disputed Abyei region last week, and will raise the issue of the UN peacekeeping force there in the British Parliament. Caroline Cox, formerly known as the Baroness Cox of Queensberry, said the United Nations Interim Security Forces for Abyei did not protect the people of Abyei when armed men killed dozens of civilians in the village of Kolom last week. The oil-producing Abyei region sits on the border between Sudan and South Sudan and is claimed by both countries. And we move to South Africa, where more than 500 refugees and asylum seekers are about to enter their 5th month at a church in South Africa's coastal city of Cape Town, as businesses in the neighborhood continue to call for their eviction. The majority of the refugees are living inside the Central Methodist Church, with others camping nearby. They said they do not feel safe living in South Africa townships. They have vowed not to leave the church's premises until they are resettled outside South Africa. The country's asylum system has been criticized for taking too long, and South Africa has been blighted by xenophobic attacks. Local businesses owners have called for the group to be evicted, saying it is obstructing their tourist souvenirs businesses located near the church. And still in South Africa, and South Africa's billionaire, a businessman caught in the middle of an expression of continental love, has beaten a retreat over a controversial comment he made in Davos, Switzerland last week. Patrice Motsepe, through the Motsepe Foundation, issued a statement apologizing for his, in quote, "Africa loves America, Africa loves Trump," a comment when he met with the US President Donald Trump on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum. Now, according to the statement, Motsepe said he had come to the realization that it was not his place to speak on behalf of a continent in the manner in which he did. Really, he did not know that we don't want him to be speaking on our behalf. All right. And still staying with South Africa, and South Africa will use its chairmanship of the African Union to, among other things, promote peace in Africa, pursue economic development, champion the African Continental Free Trade Area, amplify the calls for gender equality, and promote peace, President Cyril Ramaphosa said on Tuesday. President Ramaphosa was speaking at the South African Heads of Mission accredited to African Countries Conference in Shobane, just a few weeks until he assumes the chairmanship of the continental bloc. Now, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa is set to take over the chairmanship of the African Union for the year 2020, replacing Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who chaired the organization through 2019. And I did not see Libya there or any other chaos in Africa being on top of the list of the things that, the disputes that he would want to give urgent attention. All right. So we move to Rwanda. And street children in Rwanda's capital, Kigali, are being arbitrarily detained and abused at a holding center, according to Human Rights Watch. The New York-based rights group said in a report on Monday that vulnerable minors held in the facility known as the Gigondo Transit Center were regularly beaten and exposed to overcrowded and unhygienic conditions. Johnston Busingye, Rwanda's Minister of Justice, denied the accusations made in the Human Rights Report and describing Gikondo as rehabilitation center set up to provide children with skills and protection. When you're having underage children at your facility there, Mr. Minister, you don't provide children with skills and protection. You take the children back to school, perhaps, because they're underage. And anyway, we move to the Central African Republic, and former president of the Central African Republic, Francois Bozize, has broken his silence and is back in Bangui for months after nearly 7 years in exile. Now, the former president spoke publicly for the first time on Monday. At a press conference, he made a solemn request for forgiveness from the Central Africans and said he could be a candidate for the 2020 presidential elections. The former head of state is still under UN sanctions for his role in the Central African crisis in 2013. And we move to Nigeria, where the two chambers of the National Assembly, on their resumption from a 5-week recess on Tuesday, reviewed the state of the nation and declared that insecurity in the country had reached an alarming level. The House of Representatives lamented killings, kidnappings, banditry, and insurgency across the country and said something must be done urgently to arrest the situation. On their part, the People's Democratic members in the House assessed insecurity in the country, particularly the killings in Plateau State, and concluded that the federal government was complacent. How nice. They just found out now. Now, in the last few months, there has been an upsurge in killings and kidnappings across Nigeria, particularly in Zamfara, Kaduna, Katsina, and Niger states. Besides, there have been renewed attacks by Boko Haram and Islamic State, West African province in residents and troops in the northeast. Now, despite the killings and the kidnappings, Femi Adesina, the special advisor on media and publicity to the president, said on Sunday that insecurity in the country was not as bad as it was being reported. And still in Nigeria, and on Monday, the country criticized Transparency International following the release of the 2019 Corruption Perceptions Index report, which ranked it among the world's most corrupt nations. Nigeria was ranked 146th out of 180 countries with a score of 26 out of 100, making it the second most corrupt nation in the West African region. Through the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, ICPC, the Nigerian government faulted TI for not taking into account measures it had taken to curb the vice. The ICPC cited an increasing number of cases filed in court and jail terms secured in several convictions against people accused of corruption, including VIPs, and the ICPC also accused TI of ignoring a number of prevention measures put in place to tackle corruption. So Nigeria, of course, was mentioned to be at number 146 out of 180 countries. And leaders there don't like it very much. They're saying Nigeria has improved in terms of how they are looking at fighting corruption. So if you live there and you have first-hand information, please share with us. Is the government of President Muhammadu Buhari doing enough, to fight corruption and to mitigate? Or is this a report by Transparency International unfair to President Buhari's administration? Please talk to me and let me know. We move to Cameroon, where the leader of the Anglophone Governing Council, Ayaba Cho, has hit out at Agbor Bala for for saying that a two-state federation is the solution to the crisis in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. Now, Agbor Bala came out on Tuesday to reiterate his stance on a two-state federation, despite being part of the decentralization committee that proposed the special status as a solution to the crisis in the northwest and southwest regions. And meanwhile, President Paul Biya on Monday sacked 2 divisional officers in the northwest and southwest regions who have not been regular at their duty posts. And we go back to Sudan, where Sudan's Attorney General Tajir Sir El Hibir has conditioned the transfer of deposed Sudanese dictator Omar al-Bashir to the International Criminal Court on the outcome of the ongoing peace talks with the Darfur rebel movements in Juba on Sunday during a formal meeting with the U.S. Congress delegation led by Tibor Nagy, the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State, Bureau of African Affairs, who are currently on an official visit to Sudan. El Hibir said that the handing over of al-Bashir to the Hague depends on the outcome of the current peace talks, the victims, and other legal issues. In the meeting, El Hibir admitted that there are challenges such as the immunity of some officials that hinder the work of the recently formed investigative committees regarding the crimes committed during the toppled regime. And also we look at some news from Biafra, and the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja has fixed March 31st, 2020 for the continuation of the trial of Mr. Nnamdi Kanu, the leader of IPOB. Now, of course, according to the local news there, the court fixed the date after the federal government, of course led by President Muhammadu Buhari, asked for the Federal High Court to reject a request to restore Kanu's revoked bail. And Kanu continues there. I think one of our leaders here earlier, before we even started, there's something you said. I don't know, did he tweet? Because I didn't have time to go through. But there's something you mentioned there that Kanu's, criticized the British government and how they've been handling the Biafra matter, even from the start. And I think yesterday and the other day we talked about it here. But I don't know if you are that person. I think at the beginning of the show, one of the comments, the beginning comments there, please can you reshare? And if you have any more information about that, kindly share with us so that we can have this conversation together. Emmanuel Malual, thank you so much for joining this morning. Marcel, John, you're saying good morning, Biafra, and Emmanuel is saying it is becoming as a culture for you when always fail to protect civilians in South Sudan. You think they're becoming complacent, or they just there's that there have been like they've seen it so much and it's not even a big deal for them anymore. I don't know, what could be the problem? And Gerald Chilotam, you're saying you're watching from Italy. And Abdiaziz Ahmed, you're saying you're following from Somalia, Mogadishu. Thank you, Abdiaziz Ahmed. Nice to see you it's afternoon now. Thank you for watching. And Emmanuel, you're saying you're watching from South Sudan. And Mohammed Emirati, you're wondering, okay, why do we have to speak about President Uhuru Kenyatta? It is what is making headlines across all the leading newspapers here in the morning. MP's alleged scheme to impeach President Uhuru Kenyatta. On the Daily Nation, Uhuru tells off rebels over rival BBI rallies. And on the other one, Uhuru tells off BBI opponents, insisting he will push on. So we are looking at it because it is in the front pages of the daily, all the dailies here in Kenya, and it is what is making headlines. So we have to talk about it. But we were done with that. So now let's just talk about other things. All right. So as I was going through, John Clark, you're saying, Doctor, don't you see BBI has been hijacked by Wananchi by leaders, and they are trying to address pretending in educating voting Raias on BBI. Wananchi was going to be the final on BBI. All right, John Clark. I think you wrote this comment while I was having that conversation with Dr. just a while ago. Unfortunately, I was not able to see it on time to ask him because you directed him to him, but perhaps tomorrow I might, ask him. But also that has been a concern because even other people from, who'd want to support this process, they're saying, hey, it's becoming a political, well, it is a political process. It was started by politicians. But the turn in which it has taken now, it has become like a party politics kind of things, and it has turned to be like a campaign for 2022 elections. So I understand where you're coming from, John Clark. Samuel Chega, very good morning to you. Although it is afternoon here, about 9 minutes past noon here in Nairobi. And I've just gone through what is making headlines across Africa. So I'd like for us to just look at an item by item of these news stories. And if there's anything out there you think I should know and Africa should know, and indeed the world, please share with me in the comment section, and I'll be happy to share with the rest of us. Now, I started with the news from Malawi, and it's worrying times there in Malawi, even as now the schools, the boarding schools, the universities, all schools in Malawi now have said they shall close down, and the children will be sent home, even as the High Court is scheduled to announce the decision, on Monday. Remember, re-election of President Peter Mutharika was challenged in the court there in Malawi by opposition. They raised a number of issues regarding the re-election of President Peter Mutharika. And so the court has been in session, and the final ruling will be announced on Monday. And so I don't know, they're anticipating, I think, a not very conducive environment, or maybe they're anticipating violence, and perhaps they're anticipating chaos that might happen, on Monday after that. And this perhaps is, you've been seeing the protests that have been happening because the opposition has been very relentless in holding these protests and expressing their displeasure in the manner in which the elections were held last year in Malawi. And just to look at what's at stake here, of course, President Peter Mutharika's government has been struggling to pacify the defeated and disappointed opposition supporters nearly, months after Malawians took to the polls in the country's, elections. And not only was it a presidential election, they also elected their members of parliament and their local representatives. So it was a tripartite election there. Now, the vote scene that happened last year was seen as one of the most unpredictable in the country. The country had seen over its period. Remember, Malawi got its independence in 1964, and the elections last year was their fifth democratic elections to take place in the country. And so there was a turnout of about 74%, and among the 6.8 million, registered voters there, Malawi has been, of course, and this was the sixth, presidential election since single-party rule that ended in 1994. And, of course, Malawi Congress Party sought a delay of the results of allegations of vote rigging. The Malawi Congress Party is the official opposition party there in Malawi, and they wanted recounts in at least 10 of the country's 28 voting districts. Now, after they requested for that, and of course in some areas there were accusations that ballots had been physically doctored with corrective fluid, and the injunction for the initially granted, but then after a while, they asked for the results not to be announced until these accusations have been addressed. And of course, it was granted after the Malawian Electoral Commission there received 147 reports of irregularities that warranted for that injunction to be awarded. Now, Mutharika's re-election has been challenged by opposition political parties and governmental organizations in court, and of course through street protests, as I've mentioned there earlier. And It is said that he garnered 38.7% of the votes, and Lazarus Chakwera, the opposition Malawi Congress Party, scored about 35.5. So it was a very close call. The president had 38.6 there, and Lazarus had 35.4 of the votes, while Deputy President Chilima had came a distant third with 20.24 there. Now, even before the results had been announced, opposition supporters had participated in demonstrations, protesting, of course, reported irregularities in the electoral process. So even before the results were made public, the opposition was really crying foul. Now, Malawian Congress Party pursued a legal challenge to the poll outcome, saying there must be consequences for flouting electoral guidelines. Now, Mutharika was nevertheless sworn in and inaugurated on 31st of May 2019, using the occasion to call for unity. Opposition leader Chakwera took up his parliamentary seat afterwards, despite a party's position on the legality of election results. So this is the part that I really don't understand. And I think I saw that happening also in Venezuela. Juan Guaido, he's refused that president... forgetting his name, was not duly elected because of the irregularities that happened during the election. And he refused to even go to parliament for a very long time. So afterwards, I think the government got somebody from the opposition that, that is allied to them. And he was being sworn in as the official opposition leader there in Venezuela. And you remember, I don't know if you watched those images, him trying to climb the wall of parliament because there was a blockade against him in parliament buildings for him not to access, while the other person was taking oath of, as the official opposition leader there in Venezuela. So it was very interesting scenes there. But finally, I think the next day he was allowed to go into parliament. I don't know if, he holds that position. But Chakwera here, who is the opposition leader, despite of him saying that the whole process was a sham, despite of him saying that there was a lot of irregularities that were witnessed, and there were some things that were done to make sure that President Peter Mutharika is re-elected. And also very interesting in this is that the wife of, his brother, Peter Mutharika, the former president, ex-president who died, Bingwa Mutharika, the wife did not support his brother-in-law. Instead, he went to support the opposition led by Chakwera. And even when Mr. Peter Mutharika was being inaugurated, she did not attend that inauguration because they don't believe that Peter Mutharika won there. So... But Chakwera, having accused and expressed that he does not have faith in the electoral process of the Electoral Commission of Malawi and the way the whole process took place, he still went in and was sworn in as the opposition leader, and he took up his parliamentary seat, which also he was elected, because as I said there, the three elections were taking place on the same day. That is the presidential elections, the parliamentary elections, and the local representative elections. And so he does not dispute the other elections, but he has a problem with the presidential results. Well, I don't know if, and of course they said they did not have faith, and I think that was the key thing they wanted to be done, that the chairperson of the Malawi Electoral Commission to be removed because they believed that she was working in favor of the government, and so she oversaw an election that was fraud. Now, if the entire election was fraud, Mr. Chakwera, but he still went on and took up your parliamentary seat despite the party's position on the legality of the election results. Is this not a bit confusing? Of course, later on, the U.S. came out and said, after a back and forth, came out and said these elections were free and fair, and so Mr. Chakwera should just have a seat somewhere and relax. But Mr. Chakwera, you went into parliament and you took up your role as the official opposition leader when you went in and you were sworn in as a member of parliament in elections that you were disputing. Because if you're going to dispute it, If you're saying it was not free and fair, if you're saying the election results were doctored, just say it all the way. It cannot be one part was okay, the other part was not right, because this other part, because now I was elected on this one, so that's fine. That worked out really good. But because on this other side, there seems to be it's different. And yet you're having a blanket accusation. I'm not saying they don't have grounds for, because there's a lot of cases that are really shown that there was ground for them to be disgruntled by the whole process. But when you are accepting one side that was conducted with the same body that you're disputing, that you do not have faith on, and yet you are elected by the same body that conducted these elections, and you're saying this is not fine, but you're also accepting that your elections as a member of parliament, you don't have a problem with that. I think there's a bit of a disconnect. If you're going to dispute the whole thing, if you're going to say you don't have faith in the Malawian Electoral Commission, let it be known and let it be said so, and don't accept your post as a member of parliament. So he accepted. He went to parliament. He was sworn in, as the member of parliament, of wherever he represents, but he continues to dispute the elections. But what really worries me now is the fact that schools are closing down, children are being sent home, even as the country awaits for the results for the announcement by the Malawian court there on Monday. What are we going to see? What will be happening in Malawi? Are they anticipating another madness? Are they anticipating another chaos? Are there people who are just waiting to cause mayhem in Malawi after the decision? Is there another process perhaps that the aggrieved opposition could follow, perhaps to go and challenge the results, or that ruling, is it the final one? And what is it that the people there know that the rest of us don't know? You're removing kids from school because you're anticipating chaos. That is very serious. And I think that we are praying that it does not come to that. And we are praying that, even after the results, despite of who will be announced the winner, or despite whether, the president, the court will uphold President Peter Mutharika's re-election, or, or otherwise. But now he has been sworn in, so I don't know how that works. See, that is what I don't understand. And I saw that too, a similar case happen in Nigeria, where the presidential elections were disputed, but President Muhammadu Buhari went ahead to be sworn in, because over here, the law is different. When President Uhuru Kenyatta's win was disputed by the opposition, we had to hear it. It was a matter of urgency. It had to go through our court process, and the matter had to be determined before the president was sworn in. So you're being sworn in, and yet your win is being contested. I don't understand how these constitutions work, but it appears, that is how the constitution is in Malawi, and that is how the constitution is in Nigeria. And the cases drag for a very long time. It's nearly a year since the elections were held in Malawi, and it's just now that, the results the judiciary has determined this case and is about to give its ruling. So what if they find that President Peter Mutharika was not was not duly elected? So what will happen? You think Peter Mutharika will step down, or Peter Mutharika will start pulling a Bagbo on Malawians? Remember when Bagbo refused to leave, after he lost? He might try to do that, because why not? I mean, I was sworn in, and now you're trying to remove me? No, it's not going to work. So that is just a setup for the country to just plunge the country to chaos. Perhaps they need to relook some of these laws, especially surrounding election petitions in Africa, because this is a recipe for chaos. Should the results come not in favor of the president, I don't think he will let go easily. And we've seen the Malinishi, his administration has been using a lot of force on the protesting opposition as there in Malawi. So we're waiting to see this ruling, which will be happening on Monday. And of course, I shall be here bringing you the latest there from Malawi. And of course, Sudan, the UN Refugee Agency, United Nations Human Rights, the UNHCR, is saying that, in Sudan's West Darfur region, there has been this violence that has forced nearly 60,000 people from their homes. So this is something that Sudan needs to look at, even as it continues with its peace process. The deaths that are being reported in the Darfur region has not stopped. The deaths that started when President Omar al-Bashir was the president still seems to be continuing. And even as we speak about Sudan, let me just look at that other news story about this, the Chief Justice of Sudan and what he came out to say over the weekend. And Sudan, not the Chief Justice, but the Attorney General, Mr. Tajel Sir El-Hibir. He's saying that because Mr. Omar al-Bashir, the former president, has a warrant of arrest over his head by the International Criminal Court, and he's saying that should they handing over of al-Bashir into ICC will be dependent on several factors, and that one of them is the outcome of the ongoing peace talks with the Darfur rebel movement in Juba, and also the victims. It will be dependent on if the victims want him to go, and also the other legal issues. I don't know what these other legal issues are. But in a very interesting twist, or what really caught my attention in all this story, in the meeting, Mr. El-Habir admitted that there are challenges such as the immunity of some officials that hinder the work of the recently formed investigative committees regarding the crimes committed during the toppled regime. Now, here's the problem. A lot of these people who are involved in these crimes, a lot of the army generals who are involved in committing these crimes, who commanded, who gave orders, who are part and parcels of these crimes that happened in Darfur and continues to happen even today, are in the army. They're very high-ranking officials in the army. So when you see this person coming out and saying there are some challenges, yes, there's bound to be challenges, because when presenting Omar al-Bashir to the ICC, you're not just presenting Omar al-Bashir to the ICC. Omar al-Bashir did not physically take up a gun and kill people in Darfur. Omar al-Bashir was not the one on the fields commanding the armies or the troops or what to do or whatever, and militias and the Sudan Rapid Force, that one led by the second in command in the army, Mr. Hemeti. He did not do that. These people participated, and these people are still part of the leadership of Sudan as it is today. So if you're handing over Omar al-Bashir to the ICC, he's coming along with all these people because he's gonna mention them. Omar al-Bashir has nothing to lose at this point, completely nothing. All bets are off. So should they drag him to the ICC, then he will come out and he will mention names. He will bring up names of the people who worked, who were able to implement his orders, and who are part and parcel of this chaos, of these killings that happened in Darfur. And so you see the army has been very strong in how they're saying Omar al-Bashir cannot be tried in the ICC because they're saying they have their own court process. They have their own legal process in which Omar al-Bashir will be tried in Sudan. And as we know, according to Sudan's law, even after he was convicted last year, Omar al-Bashir cannot go to jail because according to laws in Sudan, when you're over 70 years old, you cannot be jailed. You cannot be taken to a physical jail. But he was in jail after he was removed, right? He was taken to the notorious. What is the name of that jail? The maximum security jail that he was taken. But perhaps he received a special treatment there. But they're saying when you're that old, he's 75 years old. So when you're that old, you cannot be taken to jail. So he's taken to like an old people, like a nursing home or something like that. Maybe not with all the luxury or all the comfort, but he's pretty comfortable. He'll be pretty much at home. And so, so they cannot give, they're not going to give Sudan to the ICC because it will come. He will come with them because they were part of the people who are committing these, notorious crimes there in Sudan. And also, we've seen after the Prime Minister was appointed, the new Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok has been trying to go on a charm offensive across the world and try to clear Sudan's name because Sudan has been on the blacklist of the countries that have been supporting terrorism. This after it was discovered in the early 90s that the regime was harboring the notorious criminal Osama bin Laden there early in the early 90s there. So since then, Sudan has been on this list, and this list has costed Sudan so much economically and in terms of investors. You don't want to go and invest your money in a country that has been blacklisted as a country that is supporting terrorism. You don't want nobody. That's why Sudan is not developed as much as already it would have, because it has been on this list for a very long period of time. And so Mr. Abdallah Hamdok, the Prime Minister, has been trying to say, you know what, perhaps, now it's a different day. We have a different leadership, and we're just trying to bring new structures in place. So perhaps could you please remove Sudan on the list of the countries that are supporting terrorism across the world, because it's a new regime, so nothing like that is going to happen. But we've seen, United States has been very reluctant in even handling this matter. And one time when they were confronted with this question, the person responsible for that docket, I can't remember. I think the must have been Mike Pompeo. Mike Pompeo, he came out and said, you know what, yeah, we've had Sudan, this is what they want, but you know what, we're still just watching, we're still just, we've had that is what they want, but we're still watching and seeing just how the country is going. They were not committal into removing Sudan from this list. And you know why? Because they want, by all means necessary, to have former President Omar al-Bashir to be tried at the ICC. So that is the carrot they're dangling for Sudan. If you want us to remove you from that list of countries that are supporting terrorism, and that has really blocked this country from all the benefits of having international relations, having international investors. But if you want us to remove you from this list, then you have to hand over President Omar al-Bashir to the ICC. And the army is thinking, no, should they do this? All of us, are going to be in trouble because we participated actively in Omar al-Bashir's regime. So it's a very complex matter there in the ICCs in South Sudan. And so you see the Attorney General coming in and saying, should we hand over President Omar al-Bashir to the ICC? It will be under conditions of a certain terms, and that will be depending on the outcome of the peace talks that are currently happening, that are being led there in Juba, and also the victims and the other legal issues. I don't know what other legal issues are, but at the end of the day, I don't think they will be handing over Omar al-Bashir to the ICC unless the pressure continues, and unless they sit down and they think, you know what, perhaps the country is bigger than a few individuals, and it's not a few individuals. Those top, in fact, they'll start with after Omar al-Bashir, they'll go to the second in command, the one who was responsible for Sudan Rapid Forces, the Janjaweed, he's still there. And he's the one who's been bringing Riek Machar to Juba every time during those peace talks in Juba. Hemedi has been the one accompanying Machar to Juba for those talks. So, and as it is now, the situation in Sudan is very fragile. So perhaps such a move might just destabilize the progress that is seen to be made so far. So it's very dicey, it's a very complex and very delicate situation. So perhaps this might not even be the right time to hand over President Omar al-Bashir to the ICC. Remember, Sudan has about 3 years, a transitional period, before they can, have elections. So they agreed to work together because they formed, a transitional committee that consists of half of the protesters and half of the militaries. And so they're working together. So at this point, they're still trying to put structures in place that never existed during the rule of Omar al-Bashir. They're trying to come up with laws. They're working on their constitution. Their constitution was suspended sometimes back last year. So they have a lot to do right now. And handing over Omar al-Bashir to the ICC, I don't think is something they even, is of urgency to them. So they have to deal with these other things and these other structures that needs to be in place, in all the institutions there in Sudan. So let's just see how that will work out for them. But what I know for sure, the army will not agree to hand over former President Omar al-Bashir to the ICC, because if Omar al-Bashir goes to ICC, Omar al-Bashir is stringing them all along, because all of them majority of them were involved in the chaos and the killings and the unfortunate incidences that happened in Darfur and that continue to happen. And when you see UNHCR still trying to go there and they bring in these reports, then they have to be very careful, because these are bodies that the US and other Western powers really pay attention to. These are reports that they use to put policies in place, to put sanctions in place. And so Sudan has to be very careful. And these kills that continue to happen in the Darfur region, the Prime Minister, it's high time he took up. I know he's been trying to visit all these places that the former president even never visited, So he's been trying to reach out to all these communities who have felt they've been left out for a very long time, left out of the government, have not been treated very fairly. And that's why that is what has, made them go up in arms, because they're still dealing with some rebel activities in some parts of Sudan there. So this is something that Sudan's government must take very, very very seriously, and of course try to see how some of this violence can stop. The most notorious prison is called Kubor. Yes, Emmanuel Malua. Thank you so much. Thank you for that. And yes, he is there right now, if I'm not wrong. No, they removed him after he was found guilty of, was it money laundering? They took him to, that other place out of the prison, because they said when you're over 70 years old in Sudan, you cannot be taken to jail. That is the law over there. All right, so now let's look at Nigeria. Gather around, dear friends, and anybody else in Nigeria. Of course, Nigeria on Monday criticized Transparency International following the release of the 2019 Corruption Perceptions Index, the report which ranked it among the world's most corrupt nations. Are you kidding me? Nigeria is disputing and saying no. No. We've been doing very well. Of course, Nigeria was placed at number 146 among the 180 countries that were surveyed by this report, and it scored 26 out of 100, making it the second most corrupt nation in the West African region. And of course, through the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, the Nigerian government faulted the TI for not taking into account measures it had taken to curb the vice. So they are saying this report, Transparency International, was not fair at all. And the other things that the Nigerian government has been trying to do to make sure that they're fighting corruption, and these people did not, put into context or look at some of these things that the government of, Nigeria has been doing in terms of curbing, this menace of corruption, which honestly has bedeviled almost all countries in Africa, apart from a few who are seen to be doing very well. The leading country in Africa, is it Mauritania? I've forgotten that list. But the second one is Rwanda, followed by some other African countries. From especially the Southern African countries are doing very well in terms of their fight against corruption and their the Corruption Perception Index. They are much better placed there. Of course, we've seen countries come out and refute this, especially African countries. They don't want to be told that they are corrupt. So I've been seeing reports. And it's a lot of African countries who have been coming out and saying, no, we don't trust this report. This report was unfair. This report is meant to taint our country in the wrong light. And so we're not that corrupt. It's not that bad. I mean, no, it's not. It cannot be that bad. And so these people are unfair. So now we've seen Nigeria has come out and said, come on now, we're not that corrupt. And the Transparency International, report is unfair by all means. And speaking about Nigeria, now the two chambers of the National Assembly on their resumption, they came out from a 5-week recess, and they reported back to Parliament on Tuesday. And they reviewed the state of the nation and declared that insecurity in the country has reached an alarming level. I don't even know how you take 5 weeks off. while your country is going to the dogs literally, when Boko Haram has taken reins in the country, and as members of parliament who are supposed to be there to call for an urgent meeting and an urgent sitting and to discuss the state of... I cannot believe these people are not even in parliament. I cannot. Jude Gottlieb, you're saying Nigeria is number 1 in corruption. They're saying it's number 2. So you're thinking which country beat it? It was supposed to be number 1. All right, but the fact that the members of parliament and the political class were still out enjoying their new year while the country was nearly coming to a halt because of the high levels of insecurity, the high levels of killings that are happening, is just baffling to me. And now you would think they would have called ready for a special sitting or an urgency or something just to discuss the state of security and perhaps, formulate some laws, just something to help in whatever they could do to make sure that, the security forces they raised this matter because it's of a national concern, not just a national concern. We are concerned here in Africa because Boko Haram is spreading its tentacles and it's reaching far outside of Nigeria. So the rest of us here in this continent, we have to get worried about Boko Haram. In fact, we are so worried about Boko Haram. And here in East Africa, we are fighting the scourge of Al-Shabaab. So should they meet with Boko Haram, nobody knows what that would look like. So we don't want that to happen. So Nigeria has to take care of Boko Haram and other countries. So now they met on Tuesday and reviewed the state of the nation and declared that insecurity in the country has reached an alarming level. Now the House of Representatives lamented killings, kidnappings, banditry, insurgency across the country and said something must be done urgently to arrest the situation. On their part, the People's Democratic members in the House assessed insecurity in the country, particularly the killings in the Plateau State, and concluded that the federal government was complacent. Now, this is the part that really struck me. Have they just realized that President Muhammadu Buhari was not doing enough in fighting Boko Haram? And this was his key promises when he came to power. Is it now that their eyes are opened and they're realizing the government has been complacent? The members of parliament in Nigeria are now coming out and saying very loudly they said in parliament, that their government has been complacent with some of these killings that have been happening in the country. In the last 3 months, there has been an upsurge in killings and kidnappings across the country, and particularly in Zamfara, Kaduna, Katsina, and Niger states. Besides, there has been a renewed attacks by Boko Haram and Islamic State, West African province, on residents and troops in Northeast. And I was just reading a news in the morning. There's a place in Maiduguri, and in that part of the country, there is a whole highway that people cannot use now because Boko Haram has taken over. So if you had visited the other side of the country for the holidays, there are people who are stuck there. They cannot come back and continue with their lives because of the insecurity. Boko Haram has taken over a whole highway of a state there. And Nigerian government, I don't know if I hear they've sent troops there, but still the insecurity is still there, very, very high. So despite the killings and the kidnappings, and Femi Adesina, the special advisor on media and publicity to the president, said on Sunday, and I think we had that news here yesterday on Sunday, he said that insecurity in the country was really not that bad as it was being reported. Matter of fact, perhaps the media is just over magnifying Boko Haram. It's not that it's not as that bad. It's not as it is being reported. And I just wondered, does the leadership and the presidency of Buhari, are they even in touch with what is happening in Nigeria? Does that man even know what's really happening to the people of Nigeria? To the people of Biafra, to the people of the innocent lives that are being killed every day there in Nigeria. for his media person to come out and speak, because he's speaking on behalf of the government. Such a statement, it's very heavy. You cannot just make it. So Mr. Femi Adesina was speaking on behalf of Buhari, and they said, no, it's not that bad. The insecurity is not that bad. And the media, they just, magnify something that is very insignificant. They're saying Nigerians, in fact, when I was reading I was watching that interview that he held, and what he said was that Nigerians should be very, very thankful that it's not as insecure as it were during President Jonathan Goodluck, the ex-president of Nigeria. So right now things are much better, and so Nigerians should be thankful to President Muhammadu Buhari, because he has done much. He's improved their lives and he's improved their security. So he does not even understand why you guys are complaining. Biafrans, he's assuming that you're very safe. So he does not understand why you are complaining, why you even want to leave Nigeria. You're supposed to stay there because Nigeria, as that man said, he said Nigeria is like heaven. The northeast part of the country is like heaven. Compared to when Jonathan Goodluck was in power, it was hell. And that is a direct quote from this person. How out of touch can a government be? How out of touch? Every day, deaths are being recorded in Nigeria that have been caused by Boko Haram. And we must continue talking about this. This has to be brought to their attention, because Boko Haram is not just a Nigerian problem. Boko Haram now is becoming an African problem because it is spreading in other countries in Africa, and we cannot be quiet. When you see, just the other day, they beheaded another pastor. They're beheading people, they're kidnapping people, they're raping women, they're taking children. It is chaos. And they're running their game in a country that you would think does not have a head of state. But when a head of state, through his spokesperson or through his communications person from his office, period, comes out and makes such a statement, saying that insecurity was not that bad as it is being reported, then you wonder, do they live in Nigeria? Do they watch the news? Are they aware of what is really happening? Is the government of President Muhammadu Buhari really aware of what is happening in the country that he is leading? This is a president that was re-elected even after he failed too. And maybe that is on Nigerians now. Because fighting Boko Haram was one of his key promises. He said he shall wipe these people out of the earth by 100 days once he's elected. He has never done that. Matter of fact, Boko Haram is thriving under his leadership. And then Nigerians there who went and voted for him and gave him a second term. And you know what? And which he didn't seem to care much, because even in his inauguration dinner, he did not even show up. Buhari did not even show up. Did he even take his oath of office? I think he did. He just read that and he left. He did not speak to the people. He did not care much. That shown he did not really care, but you guys elected him, Nigerians, you elected him, and now the whole of Nigeria, Biafrans, and everybody else is suffering from that. And so when he comes out and says it's not as bad, then that is a problem, because that tells you they don't see a need. The government of Buhari does not even see a need to try to come up with ways to fight Boko Haram, to come up to try and find solutions to fight Boko Haram. And Desmond Abawuri, you're saying no light, no security, no good road, no hospitals. Is that in Biafra? And you're saying Buhari is using Boko Haram for his political aim. One hand does not make sounds. Boko Haram need collective responsibilities to everyone. Yes, indeed. But it has to start with it has to start with the government of Nigeria. It has to start with the commitment of the president. All right? It has to start with that, so that everybody else can come in. And I've seen, while the legislators met there and they said the federal government was complacent. That is what we've been saying here. And I'm happy that they're able to see it. And why is President Muhammadu Buhari seen to be complacent is because he has not done much to try to curb So because he's been very reluctant in the manner in which he's been dealing with Boko Haram, he has allowed them room to grow, and now even dealing with Boko Haram is a bigger challenge than it were a couple of years ago. So, and Mike Napu, you're saying, hi, good morning to you guys. The only way out of the problems in Nigeria, let the people of Biafra go. Desmond, you're saying no one elected him. They overturned the results. And we can't even start talking about the chaotic elections that happened last year, almost a year ago, where the elections were cancelled 3 hours to opening of the polls, and then postponed to 1 week later. It was just chaotic. And Mike Napo, you're saying the man Buhari is dead. The guy there is not him. And I don't know what you make of this news that the federal court has refused in Abuja, has fixed the hearing, the continuation of the trial of Mr. Nnamdi Kanu to 31st of March 2020. Did you know that? And of course, remember, his parents will be buried next month on the 14th, which I don't think he'll be able to attend. And the court has fixed that date and asked the Federal High Court to reject a request to restore Kanu's revoked bail. So they're saying, no, we cannot have this person here, and should he come here, we shall arrest him. And so they have fixed the trial to start on March the 31st, 2020, to continue, actually, for the trial to continue. Remember, he's facing very high, charges there, and should he be found guilty, he might serve for life there in Nigeria. And I don't know, Mr. Sawore, is it? I think he's still in court. He's still in jail, even after the High Court last year there in August ruled that he should be let out. He's an activist and a journalist there who had landed from Spain. He came to Nigeria with a T-shirt written #We are all Biafrans, and so he was arrested, and he's never been released. This is even after the High Court gave an order for him to be released. So it is that kind of impunity that perhaps Mr. Kanu is avoiding to happen. To befall him when he comes back in Nigeria. And it is very unfortunate because he will not be having an opportunity to bury his parents who died last year in November, and they will be buried in February 14th. I don't know, the delay. Perhaps he was hoping that he could come back and bury his parents or what. I think that could have caused the delay of the burials, because that's a long time. But who are we to say? So very interesting developments there from Nigeria. Now let's look at South Africa. We have about 10 minutes. I didn't even realize time has gone on too fast. Let's look at South Africa. And now there are refugees who went there. Remember, after the xenophobic attacks, there are some refugees who fled into another church compound for protection. And right now, the local businesses, they are saying, no. These people and their makeshift, camps here are causing problems to our local businesses here. So the people around there have been, protesting to have these refugees removed from the country, from Cape Town. It's very sad. This comes even at the backdrop of South African president. He's said to be the AU chairperson, replacing Mr. Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, president of Egypt, who was the AU chairperson the whole of 2019. And so Cyril Ramaphosa, president of South Africa, set to take up from him and be the AU chairperson for the year 2020, which let me tell you, I feel I'm relieved that Fattah el-Sisi will not be, no longer be the AU chairperson, because in fact, perhaps I should just do some research and see what has el-Sisi achieved since he became the AU chairperson. The peace talks he held in regards to Libya, how far did they go? What did he achieve, in Sudan during that time that President Omar al-Bashir was ousted? How did AU carry itself then? How have they addressed the continued killings of people in Biafra, the continued killings of people in Amazonia, the continued killings of people in Darfur, in South Sudan, in other areas across Africa. How did he handle the xenophobia that happened in South Africa? As the AU chairperson, how did he address these matters? We will look at his scorecard, and it might not be very, very rosy there, but it's a relief that he's leaving the AU chairperson. But I don't know if Cyril Ramaphosa is the right man to be replacing Fattah al-Sisi when he has a country that is so intolerant. And what is interesting is what he put forth as the things that he seeks to pursue. Should he be, it's already been decided, once he takes over as the AU chairperson, and he says there are things he wants to look at. What is that? And one of them is to promote peace in Africa and pursue economic development and champion the African Continental Free Trade Area. Remember, that was ratified last year, and Nigeria became the last country to ratify it last year, to allow a free trade area in Africa. And also, he said he's going to amplify the calls for gender equality and promote peace, gender equality. Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, how are you going to promote peace when you're coming from a country that is so intolerant? What is it that you're going to come out and, tell Africans that is so, when Africans cannot even come, other African nationalities cannot come to South Africa and feel at home because they're being told they're foreigners, which I have never understood. You cannot go to another African country. Like, I'm going from Kenya, go to Uganda, and you're calling me I'm a foreigner. I'm not a foreigner like that. I might not be a Ugandan nationality or a Tanzanian nationality or a South African nationality, but I'm not a foreigner like that. I don't think that is a befitting title for another African visiting another African country. And so even now we see that the refugees who are still seeking asylum there in South Africa are still facing, threats against their lives, as now the locals, they're in Cape Town, are protesting, and they're saying these people should be out of here. They should be taken back to their countries. And some of these people are running away from the same persecutions and the same very threats that face their lives from their own mother country, and they ran over to another African country thinking that, perhaps I will be safe here, but that has not been the case. All right. So, Marcel John, there you're saying the most beautiful thing you can wear is confidence. Biafra is coming. Thank you. Emmanuel Malual, how are you this morning? And thank you so much. So, of course, like I said there, President Cyril Ramaphosa is set to take over the chairmanship of the African Union for the year 2020. And some things that he says he wants to look at as in his chairmanship is, among other things, promote peace in Africa. Promote peace in Africa, while some Africans cannot go to South Africa and be at peace. I don't understand how he intends to do that. Pursue economic development. And I see promoting peace in Africa. I don't know if some of these things that are happening in Biafra, in Amazonia, in Darfur, in what, will that form part of some of the things that he would want to look at and to solve and find solutions to? I'm not sure. Pursue economic development and also amplify the calls for gender equality and promote peace. And so let's just see, President Cyril Ramaphosa, we shall be watching and seeing how you'll be handling some of these problems that are plaguing Africa this morning. And of course, a member of the British offload, that is in South Sudan, says she witnessed the immediate aftermath of a massacre in the disputed Abyei region last week and will raise the issue of the United Nations peacekeeping force there in the British Parliament. Caroline Cox, formerly known as the Baroness Cox of Queensberry, said the United Nations interim security forces for Abyei did not protect the people of Abyei when armed men killed dozens of civilians in the village of Kolom last week, and that is something that has to be pursued. Somebody has to get to the bottom of it and see why is it, even with all these forces around Abyei, civilians were still killed. Somebody has to pursue this. And just quickly before I leave, Let's look at Ambazonia, and now, of course, President Paul Biya has sacked 2 divisional officers in the northwest and southwest regions because they have not been showing up in their duty post. And we've seen some leaders, Anglophone, the leader of the Anglophone Council, Governing Council, Mr. Ayaba Cho, coming out and castigating another leader in Anglophone there, Agbor Bala, for saying that as two-state solution as two-state federation was the solution to the Amazonian crisis. The reason why the Anglophone Governing Counciling leader was castigating this person, even after saying that, is because, Mr. Agbor Bala is part of the decentralization committee that proposed the special status. So he's telling him, you cannot be the people who are part of the people who thought a special status for Anglophone or for Ambazonia was the solution, and yet you're coming out here and saying as two-state federation will be like, why is the double speak? What exactly are you saying? If you are proposing this and yet you're part of the committee that suggested a special status, this is hypocrisy and will not work. So we've seen the lack of unity sometimes with the Anglophone leaders there that has worked to defeat their sole purpose, and that is realizing their own nation of Ambazonia land. So the castigation there of Ayaba Cho, who hit out on Agbor Bala, coming out and saying now that two-state federation was the solution to the crisis of the Anglophones. That is very hypocritical, because he sits in the committee that decided to come out with a decree that a special status should be given to Anglophone. So special status does not equal a free government, does not equal, the referendum that Ambazonians have been looking for. So he's telling him now, you cannot do this double speak. You have to say what really you mean, because you're speaking from both sides of your mouth, and this is confusing. So this does not help in solving the crisis for Ambazonians there. So I'm just hoping the leaders can learn to speak in one voice there, so that a solution, and of course the solution that Ambazonians have been agitating for is to leave Cameroon, and the solution that Biafrans have been agitating for is to leave Nigeria. So, but unless and until people are able to speak with one voice and there's no fights that are necessary, then there is power in unity. So, Innocent Chibu, thank you so much. You're saying good morning to you, our sister. And where's Dr. Matsanga? We spoke with him just a few moments ago over the phone. He's not in the country. No, he's not in Nairobi, but we should be back in the studio very soon. Biafrans world over sends greetings to all, but we would laid to rest IPOB royal parents on the 14th of February. Yes, and I think I've already announced that. Thank you so much. Emmanuel Malual, you're saying we are not understanding the role of the mandate of the UN in South Sudan. There was some killings in most parts of South Sudan while there is forces where the forces were represented. I think that is the same problem that DRC has been having. You remember, just a few weeks ago, from I'm just trying to remember this name, that there are a lot of killings in this town. Is it Jenny or something? I can't remember the name exactly. So the civilians over there were very mad and started fighting the police. In fact, they went and they burnt a UN camp that was situated just close to where killings were being done arbitrarily. And they're saying, so what is the point of having a police post here? What is the point of having a United Nations soldiers camp here, and yet you're not helping in improving the situation among us? So the civilians were very angry, and they were fighting the authority, and they're saying, if you cannot protect us, then we are going to take the matters in our own hands. And so that is, I think, is a similar situation with South Sudan, because why are people being killed? Well, there's a huge number of United Nations contingent there who are supposed to be protecting this. That is why they're there, to protect the people, to protect the civilians, and they fail to do that time and time again. That is a shame, and of course the United Nations should relook at their mandate and make sure the people they send there actually get to do what they've been sent there to do. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for engaging with me. This has been Good Morning Africa. I hope to see you here tomorrow for another edition so that we can look at what else is happening across Africa. And if you have a topic or a country or something that you want us to talk about that concerns Africa, it will be a pleasure. Please share and we shall look at it and talk about it. Thank you so much. My name is Miriam Agutu. It has been a pleasure.